Okay, so the title is kind of clickbait because, to be honest, I'm not sure precisely what the problem with Science Saru, the studio behind Dandadan, actually is. But according to its founder, there clearly must be one, and I've got some ideas. Welcome to the news from 15 days ago. It was announced on February 17th that Masaaki Yuasa, legendary auteur, animator, and director, co-founder of Science Saru, and most prestigiously, guy who I've mentioned the most times on this channel without actually having made a full video about his work, has drawn yet another cute little guy, and with it founded a second animation studio called Ame Pippin in collaboration with Asmik Ace, Aniplex, and Comics Wave Films. Yuasa, the creator of masterpieces like Ping Pong and the Tatami Galaxy, stepped down as CEO of Science Saru in 2020 after 7 years. He didn't give much of a reason other than that he wanted to take a break, and he did continue collaborating with the studio after leaving his post as CEO. Japan Sinks 2020 would be released shortly after, and he continued working on his feature film Inu-Oh. And his passion for animation clearly never died down at all, as he continued to post these little doodles and studies unbelievably prolifically on Twitter ever since. I'm sure creating art and being the CEO of a growing company are two very different jobs, so at the time it seemed like he had just tired of the whole CEO business. Either that or he left out of shame with the impending release of Japan Sinks 2020, which is his only subpar creation to date. But, well...
Oh shit. Here we go again.
Starting a whole new studio kind of throws that assumption into question, and brings some past allegations back into consideration. Yuasa and Eunyoung Choi started the studio in 2013 with some ideals in mind. According to Choi, the name Science Saru, or Science Monkey, combines logic and business with playful fun and creativity, while keeping half the name in English points to the studio's international nature. Japan is of course known for its ruthless work culture, and the animation industry is particularly brutal, so by hiring animators from all over the world, they set themselves up for higher standards of working conditions than many of their competitors, while also creating the unique style that they're known for, which often doesn't fully conform to the specific trends of Japanese animation. But in 2021, working conditions in the industry were at the forefront of people's minds with the whole MAPPA debacle, and Canadian animator Joan Chung came out with her own stories about Science Saru, where she had worked from 2019 to 2021. While she had positive things to say about the work culture in general and felt welcome there, she claimed that the studio had taken on too many projects at one time. Inu-Oh plus Star Wars Visions and 2 other TV series was more than they had ever had on their plate at one time, and the staff was spread too thin.
At the moment, we work on like 3 TV shows and 1 feature film. We are about only like less than 100 people, 70 or 80 people, and it's a lot of work.
I have some horror stories from this studio, which are thankfully fewer than some of Saru's competitors, but, and this is a big one for me, a studio should not have its 20-something girls crying in the bathroom doing all-nighters. To be clear, Science Saru is clearly far from the worst offender here, which Chung even pointed out. The mere fact that they pay their animators salaries instead of by cut puts them ahead of most of their competitors in that regard. So if anything, it's more of an indictment of the industry as a whole, but it is still the studio succumbing to the industry pressures it sought to avoid, and it does coincide roughly with Yuasa's departure, which begs the question of cause and effect. Since he left, headed by Eunyoung Choi, the studio has branched into more mainstream projects. Dandadan is emblematic of this change, being a multiple-season, ongoing, popular shonen manga adaptation. Again, Chung only had positive things to say about the individuals she had worked with, including the co-founder and newer CEO, so I'm not saying Yuasa good, Choi bad. She certainly seemed just as committed to the goals for better working conditions as Yuasa was. This does seem to be a pattern in the anime industry, though. For example, Masao Maruyama, one of the Madhouse founders, left the studio in 2011 to escape the corporate environment and limitations, and created MAPPA, which, of course, grew over the years and ironically became the poster boy for corporate domination and terrible working conditions, only for Maruyama to leave again in 2016 to create a third studio, M2. Maybe Yuasa left Science Saru because he felt it was straying from its original vision, too much science, not enough monkey, and he wanted to escape this cosmic force that pushes studios toward corporatism and overwork. Maybe it had just gotten too big and he wanted to reset to focus more on his own personal projects again, or maybe he really did just want to take a break and let the studio's younger talent continue to develop. We'll just have to wait and see the direction each studio takes in the next few years. Since 2022, Science Saru does seem to have reduced its workload back to near its pre-pandemic levels, only releasing Dandadan and The Colors Within in 2024, so maybe Eunyoung Choi really did take Joan Chung's words to heart. And like I touched on in my first Dandadan video, Yuasa's influence is still fairly barely visible even after he left. Personally, I'll definitely be keeping an eye on both studios to see what Yuasa's work will look like without the influence of the other artists he had gathered, and to continue to see where Science Saru goes from here, powered by a combination of people like animation lead and Scott Pilgrim Takes Off director Abel Gongora, who was one of the first to join the studio back in 2013, and up-and-coming talent like Dandadan director and Yuasa's former assistant Fuga Yamashiro, both of whom will be working together to direct Dandadan Season 2. Speaking of Fuga Yamashiro, he has a really interesting attitude about his work, and if you want to learn more about him and his homemade encyclopedia of storytelling techniques gathered from other filmmakers, go watch this video where I go more in depth on his unusual strategy and how it made Dandadan great. And as always, thanks to my supporters on Patreon, whose names I will only be saying half of today in the interest of brevity because this was such a short video. Smack, Scorp, Cat, Retro Serial, Leia, New, Patrick, Arbo, Junjujun, Dr. Yolo, Grass, Squid, Vuggle, and Sam, as well as all the other names on the screen. Thanks for watching.